Just see whether you remember, right? Now look at this. What is the name of the standard? Quickly. SlFRS 15. What is the name? Revenue generated from contract with customer. Right? So according to SlFRS 15, we are going to recognize the revenue using a model which is called as 5-step model. Understood? According to SlFRS 15, we discuss 5 steps for recognizing the revenue. What is the step 1? Identify the contract with customers. Initially, you have to do the identification. Then, this is the example. What is the example? I told you. We agreed with the customer to sell an air conditioning machine and to provide 3 services. Right? So this is the story. We have entered into an agreement with the customer to sell an air conditioning machine and to provide 3 services. So that is the contract, identification of the contract. So in the exam, if you are given a case like this, an air conditioning machine seller has entered into an agreement with the customer, and you are given that story, then you have to first identify what is the contract with customer. Then you have to write. So in case you ask, identify 5 models, 5 steps in the model. As the first one, you have to say identification of the contract. The example, according to this contract, the seller has agreed to sell an air conditioning machine and to provide 3 services. That is the contract. Number 2, identify performance obligations. What do you mean by performance obligations? Yeah, remember the term. Performance obligations are the promises in the contract. Those are the promises. What are the promises we have given to the customer? So according to my example, there are 2 promises. What are the 2 promises? Ek thamai sale of the air conditioning machine. Palagi promise එක තමයි අපි කියනවා machine එක දෙන්න. දෙක මොකක්ද? Services තුනක් දෙන්න. නේ sale of the machine කියන්නේ first promise. Second promise is what? We will provide 3 free services. That is the second promise. Third, determine the transaction price. Transaction price එක කියලා කියන්නේ the amount of consideration which we charge from the customer to provide the agreed goods or services. අපි යාට කියා එයාගෙන් charge කරනවා. මම තමගේ example එකේදී 520,000 charge කරනවා. This 520,000 is what? Transaction price. This is the price, the total consideration which we collect from the customer. Right? Fourth one, allocation of transaction price among performance obligations. Then අපි ගාව තිබ්බ performance obligations දෙකක්, promises දෙකක්. මේ 520,000 අපි ඒ promises දෙකට බෙදන්න ඕනේ. ඒ කියන්නේ sale of machine එකට කීයද, providing services වලට කීයද. Right? අපි හිතමු 520,000 is the total transaction price, of which 400,000 is charged for the machine. 120,000 is charged for services. අපි හිතමු that also comes as 40,000 for each service into 3. 40,000 කියලා දුන්නත් 120,000. එතන 120,000. මේක තමයි allocation. Sale of machine එකට 400,000, services වලට 120,000. That is the allocation of transaction price among performance obligations. Last, what is it? Recognize the revenue when performance obligation is satisfied. Performance obligation එක satisfied වුණාට පස්සේ තමයි recognize කරන්නේ revenue. Understand? ඒක make a performance obligations number 1 is what? Sale of the machine. Machine එක sale කළා විතරයි. තාම එක service එකක් අතට දෙන්න නැත්නම් you can take your income as how much? 400,000. That is your sales income. Services එක දුන්නාට පස්සේ when the second performance obligation is satisfied only, you can take your service income is 120,000. එක service එකයි නම් දුන්නේ 40,000. Services දෙකයි නම් 80,000 likewise. Understand? So that is what the 5-step model. Now take the Newton series. බලන්න මේක කියනවා, right? I told you income. Income එක ඇතුලේ parts දෙකක් තියෙනවා. මොකක්ද? එකක් තමයි revenue, අනිත් එක තමයි profits. Income consisted with both revenue and profits. මම කියනවා එතන revenue කියන්නේ මොකක්ද? That is what the scope which is covered by the standard. අපි මේ standard එකකින් කතා කරන්නේ total income නෙමෙයි, only the revenue part. ඒ කියන්නේ business එකක තියෙන main income එක ගැන. හරිද? Profits කියන්නේ මොනවද? You can get profits from any transaction නේ. අපි මොන හරි කරලා තිබ්බ පරණ machine එකක් විකුණනවා, පරණ motor vehicle එකක් විකුණනවා. With this also you can get the profit. Profit කියන part එක income එකක්, but it's not coming under revenue. It's not under the scope. That's mean the 5-step model. 5-step model in recognizing revenue. Step 1, identify the contract. The first step is identify the contract. Number 2, identify performance obligations. 3, determine the transaction price. Determine the transaction price. Fourth one, allocate the transaction price among performance obligations. Fifth one, recognize revenue when performance obligation is satisfied. මේක ඇත්තටම හරිම ලේසි ස්ටෑන්ඩඩ් එකක් A level මට්ටමට. මේ 5 steps තව තැන් වලට යූස් වෙන්න ගියාට පස්සේ එච්චරම ලේසි නෑ. but for advanced level අපිට තියෙන්නේ මේක නිකන් තියෙන fundamentals only. But I'm not going to say it's a very simple stand because according to the nature of the contract, nature of the company and all, right, this may become sometimes high complex. Right? Make a standard එක දෙන්නේ complexity එක නැති කරන්න. But when it comes to the situation, that may be really complex. මොකද transaction එකක් කියලා කියන්නේ නිකන් contract එකක් කියලා කියන්නේ හරියට එනවා බඩු ගන්නවා යනවා නෙමෙයි. There are some contracts that include so many facts. Then by considering all the facts only, you have to determine what are the 5 steps. Once you recognize the 5 steps, you can easily identify the contract. But when you put some conditions into 5-step model, that may generate some troubles. Understand? මම චුට්ටක් එහාට කියලා දෙනවා. ඒ කියන්නේ මම දන්නේ ඒ රෝල් කොච්චර apply වෙයිද කියලා, but I will discuss for some extent here. නිකන් ඔය basically තියෙන point එකට එහා චුට්ටක් එහාට මම යන්නම්. ඒ කියන්නේ possible තැන් වලට මම යනවා standard එකේ. හරි බලන්න. Number 1, then I am going to discuss these steps one by one. ඔන්න අපි steps ටික one by one discuss කරන්න යනවා. බලන්න පළවෙනි එක මොකක්ද? Identify the contract. Step 1 is what? Identification of the contract. ඔයාලා ටියුට් එක නැද්ද? ටියුට් එක නැද්ද? කො? අනේ පොඩ්ඩක් පේන තැනකට එන්න ඕනේ නැත්තම් කරමු. මම ගිය සතියේ කිව්වත් එක්කනේ ටිකට් මෙන්න මේකට එන්න. ඉක්මනට එන්න. කියන්න ඕනේ කෙනාට වෙන වෙනම තමන් තේරෙන්න බෑ ටියුට් එක නැත්තම් තේර කෙනෙක් ආරගෙන වාඩි වෙනවා. හරි ලැජ්ජාකාරී වෙන්නේ. බලන්න. See the first one. Identify the contract. ළමයි මෙන්න මෙහෙම රිස්ක් එකක් අපිට A level වලදී තියෙනවා. එක්සෑම් එකේදී අපි වෙන වෙනම අහන්න පුළුවන් අර last 30 20 questions වල identify what is the contract according to SlFRS 50. තේරුණාද? ඒ නිසා මේ 5 steps පාඩම් කරගන්න නම් අහලා තියෙනවා. What is the transaction price කියන්නේ මොකක්ද කියලා කවුරුද කියවුවා. තේරුණාද? ඔයගේ මොකද identify determine the defined performance obligations according to SlFRS 50. ඒ නිසා මේවා පාඩම් කරගෙන යන්න ඕන නැත්නම් it's a risk. Okay? Easy. Read the first one. Identify the contract. A contract is an agreement between two or more parties that creates enforceable rights and obligations. මම explain කරන්න මෙහෙම. මොකද කියන්නේ? A contract is an agreement between two or more parties which creates enforceable rights and obligations. මොකද idea එක? Agreement contract is an agreement. ඒක තේරෙනවද? පටන් ගන්න එහෙම. Contract is an agreement. Agreement එක තනියෙන් ගහගන්න බෑනේ. Between two or more parties which creates enforceable rights and obligations. Enforceable කියන එකේ සිංහල වචනේ තමයි බලාත්මක කළ හැකි. පාර්ශව දෙකක් හෝ වැඩි ගණනක් අතර බලාත්මක කළ හැකි අයිතිවාසිකම් සහ බැඳීම් ඇති කරන්නා වූ එකඟත්වය කිවිසුමක් ලෙස හඳුන්වනවා. ඒක තමයි සිංහල වලට කරන්නේ. ඒ කියන්නේ contract is an agreement between two or more parties which creates enforceable. ඒ කියන්නේ agreement එකක් ඇතුලේ මට තියෙන්න ඕනේ enforce කරන්න පුළුවන්. ඒ කියන්නේ මට පුළුවන් වෙනවනේ මේකට විරුද්ධව උසාවියට යන්න. ඒක නිකන් enforceable rights and obligations එක. මගේ rights වලින් මට උසාවියට යන්න පුළුවන් වෙනවා. තේරුණාද? ඒ වගේ contracts තමයි මේකෙන් කතා කරන්නේ. නැත්තම් මේ හිතන්නකෝ පිරිමි ළමයි ගෑනු ළමයිකට එක agreement එකක් ගහගන්නවා. ඒක මොන තරම් agreements ඇතිනේ වල ගහලා තියෙන මේ agreements. එතකොට නේ but මං අහන්නේ මේකයි. Does it create enforceable rights and obligations? නේ. එයා කියනවා මං කවදාවත් ඔයාලට නොකියපත් කරන්නේ නැහැ. මං කන්න කලින් වාට මිස් කෝල් එකක් ගහනවා නේ. මං ගෙදරින් එන්න කලින් හැමදාම ඔයා ඉන්න පැත්ත බලලා මොන හරි එකක් විතර කියනවා. there are some agreements නේ. but those those do not create enforceable rights and obligations. Understand? ඒ කියන්නේ අපි පස්සේ මේක කතා කරන එහෙම වෙන්න නම් that should have a commercial substance. මේ agreement එකට එනකොට මේක that should be a commercial agreement. That should have a commercial substance. හරි මම explain කරගෙන යනවා. Understand? Now ඒ කියන්නේ your personal agreements you can take under SlFRS 50. Understood? Then there should be a then making our condition should be satisfied to take under the scope of SlFRS 15. SlFRS 15 එකේ scope එකට එන්න නම් there are some conditions to satisfy. يعني හැම agreement එකක්ම අපි ගහගන්න SlFRS 15 වෙන්නේ නෑ. ඒකේ scope එකට එන්න these conditions should be satisfied. Understand? ඉතින් ධ්‍යාන බලන්න what are the conditions to satisfy to take under SlFRS 15. ඒ කියන්නේ to consider as a contract. Number 1, there should be a commercial substance. I told you. What is a commercial substance? There should be a financial value. That is what the meaning of the commercial substance. So when you enter into some sort of other contracts, that probably those are not having any commercial substance. No commercial substance. Man ඔයාට ලක්ෂ 25ක් ආදරේ. So we are not going to make such contracts. No any commercial substance. Understood? Next. Well, okay, it's precious. Anyway, it's precious means what? No commercial substance. Understood? Next. මං ඔයාට අපේ ගේ තරම් ආදරේ. Maybe. Once in case I break the contract, you can take my house. You are not going to enter such contracts. But if you, as future accountants, if you want to enter into such agreements, you better ask, will include some commercial substance here. In case you break the contract, what happens? You have to give your house to me, right? You may enter into such contracts, right? Then no party will enter into such contracts, possibly, right? Then parties have approved the contract. ලස්සන කතාව. එක තමයි commercial substance එකක් තියෙනවා. දෙක තමයි parties. Both parties should have approved the contract. මං කියනවා මම මගේ shop එකේ මම ඔයාලට මොකක් හරි product එකක් විකුණන්න. I am the seller. Buyer also should accept that one. එයා කිව්වොත් නෑ නෑ මට එහෙම එකක් ඕනේ නෑ. It's not a contract. Both parties should have approved the contract. Understand? Third one, rights and obligations are defined. මට කියන්න rights තියෙන්නේ කාටද? Rights තියෙන්නේ customer side එකේ mainly. Obligations තියෙන්නේ seller ගේ side එකේ. එහෙම කියන්න බෑ basically mainly, right? කියන්නේ නෑ එහෙම කියන්න බෑ මොකද seller ගේ පැත්තෙන් මුලින්ම right එකක් දෙනවා මොකද්ද? To get the money also. At the customer's side, he has a right to get the goods. So for both sides there are rights. මට right එකක් නැහැ අනිත් පාඩේ එකට මොකද්ද? Obligation එක. ඒ කියන්නේ for both parties එක side එකකට right එකක් එනකොට for the other party that will become an obligation. Understand? Next, payment conditions are defined. ඒ කියන්නේ අපි මෙහෙම හිතමුකෝ අපි agreement එකකට එනකොට according to this SlFRS 15 payment condition should be defined. අපි කියනෝනේ අපි ඔයාලට AC machine එක ගෙනල්ලා high කරලා දෙන්න නම් ඔයා full payment එක කරන්න ඕනේ. And that's payment condition. Without the payment conditions නේ අපි මෙහෙම කරනවා නැත්නම් ඔයා 50% advance එකක් දුන්නොත් අපි ඔයාලගේ ගෙදරට ඇවිල්ලා මේක fix කරනවා. ඊට පස්සේ තමයි ඉතුරු payment එක කරන්න. There are some conditions. Those should be defined. Then collection of consideration is probable. ඒ කියන්නේ seller ගේ පැත්තෙන් මේක sell කරපු cash එක මට හම්බ වෙනවා කියන possibility එක තියෙන්න ඕනේ. අපි දැන් මම ගිහලා AC machine එක high කළාට හරි ඒක සල්ලි collect කරගන්න මට කිසිම විදිහක් නැහැ. If the collection is not probable, then you can't take this as a contract. අපි හිතමු පන්සලකට donation එකක් විතර ගිහලා මේ AC machine එක high කරනවා. හාමුදුරුවෝ කියනවා ඔබ ආසික මාත්‍යා සල්ලි තියෙන වෙලාවට දෙන්න. සල්ලි තිබ්බොත් දෙන්න. අපි දැන් හිතමුකෝ සමහරවිට එහෙම දෙනවනේ. ඔය AC එක high කරනකොට අපි නොදීන්නේ නැහැ. පන්සලට වැඩිපුර ආධාරයක් આવොත් අපි ගෙවන්න. හැබැයි එතන at the seller's point of view, we can't take this as a contract, right? Lokohamduro doesn't confirm that. He will definitely pay money on next month. He says, "Salli hamunot gewanna." Why? On that condition, you can't take this as a contract. Why? The collection of consideration is not probable. There's a possibility, but with that one, you can't take it as a contract. So, what are the 5 conditions to take the scope? To take another scope of SlFRS 15, number 1, there should be a commercial substance. Then, payments conditions should be defined. Party should have approved the contract, and rights and obligations should be defined, and collection of consideration is probable. When the 5 conditions are satisfied, you can take this as a contract according to SlFRS 15. තේරුණා? පොඩ theory part එක තමයි පාඩම් කරගෙන අහන්න පුළුවන් ඈ. අවුත් කියන්න එපා දන්නේ නැහැ කියලා මම කියලා තියෙනවා. මම කියනවා මයි කියනවා right. Then second, identify the performance obligations. Performance obligations are promises in the contract. You better highlight the term promises. Performance obligations are promises in the contract. performance applications කියන්නේ promises. මොනවාද promises? අපි promise කරනවා මේව කරන්න. Those are the promises. And types of performance applications. මෙන්න මෙතන ලස්සන කතන්දරයක් තියෙනවා. බලන්න. මේක අහලා නැහැ ඒ වලට තාම. මොකද මේ ස්ටෑන්ඩඩ් එකේ එළවලු තාම එකපාරයි හරියට කියනවා. දෙසරයක් එකසරයක් MCQ එකක එකසරයක් කම්යුනිකේෂන් එකේ මේ පරහන්න පුළුවන් කම්පැනි ගානක් ඇතුලේ. performance applications types දෙකක් තියෙනවා. distinct performance application and not distinct performance applications කියලා. මේ හැම එක කතන්දරයි. distinct performance application එකක් කියන්නේ you can take those separately. If the performance application is not distinct, you can't take that separately. You have to add that with another performance application. I will explain. Look at this. मैं air conditioning machine है. Sell करना पड़ता है. मैं कोई मत तो यार क्यों भी नहीं है. मैं हूँ कहता हूँ. मैं हूँ कहता sale of the air conditioning machine. मैं इतने provide services. Air conditioning machine ने का sell करना services देने ना मना करना. අපි මේක ගිහිල්ලා කස්ටමර්ගේ ප්‍රමිසස් එකේ ෆික්ස් කරමු. ඔයා ගිහිල්ලා සිංගල් එකත් එක්ක ඇග්‍රී වෙනවා AC මැෂින් එකක් ගන්න. හරිද? ඒක ඇතුලේ එයාට අමුතුවෙන් කියන්න ඕනේ නැහැ. අපි දන්නවා AC මැෂින් එකට පේ කරනවා මොනවා කරනවා? ෆික්ස් කරනවා කියලා. Understand? The fixing is there. හැබැයි මෙහෙම නෑ. අපි તો මේක වෙනස් මැෂින් එකක්. ඔන්නම් කම්පැනි එකට ෆික්ස් කරන්න පුළුවන්. ඒව නැත්නම් වෙන කෙනෙකුට ෆික්ස් කරන්නත් පුළුවන්. හරිද? අපි වෙන මොකක් හරි මැෂින් එකක්. අපි සාමාන්‍ය ප්‍රැක්ටිස් එකක තමයි සමහර වෙලාවට අපි දැන් මේ වගේ කරන කම්පැනි එකෙන්ම ෆික්ස් කරලා දානවා. තේරුණාද? ඒතර මේ ෆික්ස් කරන එකට ඕනේ කොස්ට් එක 400,000 ඇතුලේ තියෙනවා. ආයි බලන්න මේක ෆික්සින් කියන එක වෙනම ගන්න ඕනේ නැහැ. තේරුණාද? It's not distinct. මෙහෙම කරන්න බෑ. Sale of the machine, fixing the machine, providing services. එහෙම කරන්න බෑනේ. Selling and fixing දෙක එකයි. එතන තියෙන්නේ promise එක not distinct. ඒ කියන්නේ ඒක වෙනම වෙන් කරන්න ඕනේ නෑ. That also included in selling. අන්න ඒවට තමයි කියන්නේ not distinct performance applications කියලා. ඒක වෙනම ගන්න එපා. ඔයාලා මෙහෙම කරනොත් මේ ගන්නේ. ඔයාලා question එකේ කියනවා sale of the machine, fixing the machine and providing services කියලා. I as the habit in the market, all the people, those who sell air conditioners usually fix that to the customer. Then you can't take that as a distinct performance application. अभी तो मैं कहूँ तो machine ने कहा, मैं करना, सामान्य style का ना machine ने का sell करना, fix करने का समाधान ना मेरे के लिए कितना fix करना, और ना यार लगे तो करना खुला, service करने का company का करना, ये वही मिला वो यार ने sales කියන එක එකක් කියලා ගන්න වෙනවා fixing කියන එක තව එකක් කියලා ගන්න වෙනවා services කියන එක තව එකක් ගන්න වෙනවා ඒ වුණා නම් මෙතන තියෙන performance obligations දෙකක් තේරුණාද එතකොට මේක distinct නම් if the performance obligation is distinct if the promise is distinct you can take that as a separate performance obligation ඒ වුණා නම් sale of the machine කියන එකක් distinct fixing කියන තවත් එකක් services කියන තවත් එකක් distinct performance obligations, distinct promises in the contract, you have to take separately as a separate performance obligation. If it is not distinct, you have to combine that with another obligation and take that as a single one. පැහැදිලි කිව්වද? ඒක ගාන බලලා අපිට තේරුම් ගන්න ඕන හදනකොට හරි පරිස්සමට how many promises here? මට හිතෙනවා. දවල්ට මේකත් දෙන්න. එයා AC air conditioner sell කරන machine එක sorry AC එකක් sell කරන company එක ඔය story වලට මෙහෙම කියනවා. The company has agreed with the customer to sell the machine, to fix the machine and to provide services. Then තාම confused right? මේක තියෙන්නේ performance obligations තුනයිද දෙකයිද? යටින් කියනවා usually in the market machines are fixed by the seller. අනේ ඒක මොකද කියන්නේ? Distinct or not distinct? It's not distinct. මෙම කිව්වනම් usually market එකේ මේ type එකේ machine එකක් company එක fix කරලා දෙන්නේ නැහැ. It's customer's responsibility to get this fixed. ඒ වගේ වචන පාවිච්චි කළොත් මොකද කියන්නේ? It's distinct. You have to take that as a separate performance obligation. එහෙම නම් performance obligations තුනයි. Sale of the machine, fixing the machine and services. Understand? Is that clear what I said? Right. එතකොට මේක කියන්නේ distinct performance obligations take separately, not distinct performance obligations combined with other. Distinct නැත්නම් මොකද කරන්නේ? You have to combine that and take. Okay. Next one. Third one. Determine the transaction price. එක අවුරුද්දක අහුව ඔය definition එක. The transaction price is the amount of consideration to which a company expects to be entitled in exchange for transferring promised goods or services to a customer. You have to just have an idea. The transaction price is you better study the amount of consideration, right? The amount of consideration agreed by the business to provide goods or services. Can you idea එකේ goods or services provide කරන්න අපි agree වෙලා තියෙන amount of consideration, but that is what you call as the transaction price. Understood? Then allocate the transaction price among performance obligations. This is the allocation part. හරි. ඒකේ ලස්සන කතාවක් තියෙනවා බලන්න. ඒක තාම මෙච්චර තදට ආවේ නැහැ එළ වලට. මොකද එළ වලට තාම මෙච්චර අහලා නැහැ මේක. තාම නිකන් අහලා තියෙන උඩින් පල්ලෙන් විතරයි. හොත් අතර මෙතනින් අහන්න පුළුවන් ප්‍රශ්නයක් මම ඉගෙන ගන්න හදනවාද. මේක කියනවා allocate the transaction price to each performance obligation to the basis of the relative standalone selling price of each distinct goods or service. There are lots of වචනයක් තියෙනවා relative standalone selling prices. You better highlight that relative standalone selling prices. Very well අහන්න පුළුවන් ද MCQ එකකට, right? According to SlFRS 15, right? How the transaction price should be allocated among performance obligations on which basis? What are the basis? Relative standalone selling price basis. මම කියලා දෙන්නම් ඉස්සරහ ගානක. Right. Fifth one. Recognize the revenue when performance obligation is satisfied. නැත්නම් මම එක්ස්ප්ලেইন කරලා යන්න චුට්ටක් අහන්න නැත්නම් ඔක question එක කෙලින්ම හදන්න පුළුවන්. Look at this. Right, may I have allocation how to do that according to the relative standalone selling price. Relative standalone selling price, this is the idea. Maybe that. Look at it. ඉතින් අපි කොන්ට්‍රැක්ට් එකක් තියෙනවා මේ වගේ එකක්. අපි it's a sort of item. Kitchen එකට pantry covers sell කරන company එක. Company which sells pantry covers, right? With some designs or something. Right? And there came a customer and the customer asked how much is this? අපි කියනවා our price, we sell these components at 1,600,000, right? But if you want, we can fix this also. Customer, you don't know how much is this. There are pantry items and all, right? Pantry cupboards and all, right? There are some places in there. We can fix this as it is, right? We can provide this. In total, we charge 800,000. We charge 800,000. Customer අපිට අහනවා අපිට මේක අරන් ගිහලා අපිට fix කරගන්න පුළුවන්. අපිට okay. If it is so, we will give you this at 600,000. Right? අපි කියනවා for sales and fixing we charge 800,000. Customer අපිට අහනවා අපි මේ වගේ වෙන තැනකින් ගත්තොත් can you fix this? අපි කියනවා okay, for fixing we charge 400,000. Yes, yes. मैं इतना सिंपल एग्जांपल लेता हूं. एक बार बार मशीन का हम we sell this machine. And we are a company, we usually sell machines and we do the fixing part also. Okay. अभी customer ने कहना You can buy this machine from us, right? If you buy the machine for both purchasing and fixing, we will charge 300,000. Okay. For both we charge only 300,000. Customer අපි machine එක විතරක් ගත්තා. අපි කියනවා machine එක විතරක් ගත්තොත් නම් අපි වාට machine එක sell කරන්නෙම machine එක විතරක් ගත්තොත් අපි machine එක sell කරන්නෙම ඔයාලට 250,000. For fixing, usually we charge 90,000. Can you machine you can take this at 250,000. Okay. Well, better than the machine now the fixed charge 90,000. Have you machine machine fixed 300,000. You understand? Now my question. We charge 300,000 from the customer for selling and fixing. Okay. Now there are two performance obligations. That the customer we will buy your machine. Then we enter into an agreement with the customer to sell and fix the machine. Do you understand? Usually only for the machine we charge 250,000. Usually for fixing we charge 90,000. Understand? Yeah. 110,000 charge. Right? Usually for the machine only we charge 250,000. For fixing only we charge 110,000. But as customer purchase the machine from our company, we agree with the customer to sell and fix at 300,000. Abhi all the situations in one. Then in that matter, you have to allocate this transaction price amount to performance obligations. What is the obligation one? Selling the machine. Obligation 2 is fixing the machine. Then May 300,000 selling one like fixing one like. Understand the situation. Now, how to allocate this? You have to allocate this according to the relative standalone selling price. Relative standalone selling price can make it. This is the relative standalone selling price. This is the relative selling price. This is the relative fixed price. Understood? Then you have to do something like this. Take the total 306,000. Understand? We sell and provide these two separately. We will charge how much? 360,000. Now from the customer you are going to charge only 300,000. How to allocate this? 300,000 into 250,000 over 306,000. This is the price you have to allocate for the sale of the machine. Understand? So this is the proportion. Relative standalone selling price can be 300,000 into 110,000 over 306,000. This one is the relative. Right? 208, something like this. For this. Yeah, something like this. If you machine sell what is the sales revenue? 208,300. When you fixing, what is your fixing revenue? This one. So this is what the allocation of transaction price among performance obligations according to the relative standalone selling price. Next, recognize revenue when performance obligation is satisfied. An entity shall recognize revenue as the entity satisfies the performance obligation by transferring promised goods or services to customer, and asset is transferred when the customer obtains control of that asset. Again, අපි customer ට asset එක transfer කළාට පස්සේ අපිට කියන්න පුළුවන් now the transaction is done කියලා. Understood? හරි. බැරි වෙලාවත් company ගානක ආවොත් එන්න පුළුවන් simple example එකකුයි high complex example එකකුයි දෙකක් තමයි තියෙන්නේ. ඔයිට වඩා දෙයක් කවදාවත් එන්නේ නැහැ. හරි. ඔය දෙකම මම හදන්න දාපු ගණන් එකක්වත් ඒ වලට අපි නෙවෙයි එච්චර කතාවේ නැහැ. but we just try this one. හරිද? මම කියන්නේ මේකයි. මම ඔයාලට දෙනවා examples එකක්. I just prepared these two for you. ඔය දෙක පුළුවන් ළමයින්ට A level එක මොකක් આવත් කරන්න පුළුවන්. මොකද ඔයාලට දැක් කියන්නේ නැහැ. මම අර second එකේ අරගත්ත ඔක්කොම ටික. Distinct performance obligation, not distinct performance obligation, relative standard on selling price and all. Understand? ඒ වගේ එකකට ඔයාලට එන්න පුළුවන් contract එකක් මම හැදුවා. හරි, just read, understand and do the first one. කරන්න පළවෙනි එක. කරන්න වැඩි පැහැදිලි නේ. හරියට ඉස්සරහම කරන්න step 1 කියලා ලියන්න. step 1 කියලා ලියලා ඉවරලා බලන්න මේක කියවල ඉවර වෙලා what is the contract. ඒක step 1 කියලා දාලා වාර ලියන්න ඕනේ. contract එක මේකයි. step 2 කියලා දාන්න. what are the performance obligations? Identify performance obligation 1 2 ඒ විදිහට ලියන්න. step 3 එකට මොකද කරන්නේ? this is the transaction price කියලා amount එක දාන්න. fourth step එකේ දාන්න allocate කරන්න. transaction price එකෙන් මෙච්චරක් performance obligation 1 එකට 2 එකට මෙච්චරයි. ඊට පස්සේ මේකේ කියන විදිහට බලන්න performance obligation satisfy වෙලාද කියලා. ඒතර ඔයාලට කියන්න සිද්ධ වෙනවා this is the revenue we can recognize according to the question here. Understand? So that is what the requirement of the question. Do this quickly. Right. Susat PLC sells air conditioning machines to customers. On 1st April 2023, company has entered into an agreement with the customer to sell an air conditioning machine at rupees 400,000 and to maintain the machine once every 6 months over 2 years from the date of sale of the machine. Each service would cost rupees 50,000. During the year ended 31st March 2024, the company has provided 2 services. Full amount had been collected from the customer at the date the machine was sold for the air conditioning machine and all services over 2 years. Required to explain the above contract under SlFRS 15 and recognize the revenue for the year ended 31st March 2024. හරි. ඉතින් ඔයාගේ එකක් කම්පැනි ගන්න එක આવොත් ඔච්චර කතන්දර ලියලා ඉන්න ඕනේ. You can straight away do that one. But I will explain this one by one. Let's see. මේකෙදි වෙන්න ඕනේ බලන්න. එතන ඉස්සෙල්ලා what is the contract? Sale of the machine. ඉතර ලියන step 1. Sale of the machine and providing how many services here? Every 6 months. Maintain the machine once every 6 months over 2 years. Again 4 services නේ. Once every 6 months කියලා කියන්නේ මාස 6කට සැරයක් අවුරුදු දෙකක්. ඒ කියන්නේ 4 services. අවුරුද්දට මාස 6ව දෙකයි නේ. හරිද? එතකොට මොකද මේකේ contract එක? Sale of the machine and providing 4 services. And that is the number 2. What are the number 2 performance obligations? Identification of performance obligation. How many performance obligations here? 2 performance obligation. මෙහෙම කරන්න එපා. services 4යි machine එකයි 5යි කියලා දාන්න එපා. ඒ කියන්නේ we providing services නේ. ඒ කියන්නේ performance obligation එක ඇතුලේ තමයි තියෙන්නේ service 1, service 2, service 3, service 4. But that also a single performance obligation. Therefore anyway there are in total 2 performance obligations. What are those? Number 1, selling the machine. Number 2, servicing the machine. Understand? Third one, determine the transaction price. What is the transaction price here? Maybe to sell the air conditioned machine at 400,000 and to maintain the service. Maintain the machine once every 6 months over 2 years from the date of sale of the machine. Each service would cost 50,000. එතකොට මේකේ කරන්න වෙන්නේ මෙච්චරයි. මේකේ කරන්න වෙන්නේ එතකොට how many services? 4 services නේ. 50,000 කියන්නේ 4ක්. එතන 200,000. I para 400,000 in total 600,000. The transaction price is 600,000. Am I correct? Rather the transaction price is 600,000. It's easy, not hard. The easiest one. The fourth one. What is that? Allocation of transaction price among performance obligations, isn't it? How to allocate? Performance obligation one මොකද sale of the machine. ඒකට allocate කරන්න කීයද? 400,000. Services කීයද? 200,000. Correct? Next. මේක මෙන්න මේ කතන්දරය අහගන්න. Full amount had been collected from the customer at the date the machine was sold for the air conditioning machine and all services over 2 years. Machine එක sell කරපු දවසේ services වලට එන ගානයි ඔක්කොම ටික අපි හම්බ ගත්තලු customer ගේ. ආගන්න. මට ඔයා කියන්නේ මෙතනින් කොච්චර income එකක් recognize කරන්න පුළුවන්? Only how many services we have provided? Machine එක sell කළේ on 1st April 2023 නේ. එහෙම නැති කියන්නේ. We have entered into the agreement with the customer on 1st April 2023. Now a year ended 31st March 2024 ඉවරයි. එහෙම නේ කියන්නේ. ආයි පාරක් කියන්නේ the full amount had been collected from the customer at the date of the machine was sold. Machine එක sell කළේ 1st April 2023. You understand what I'm saying? එතකොට දැන් machine එක sell කළා අවුරුද්දක් ගියා නේද? එහෙනම් how many services we should have provided? 2 services. Is that clear? Machine selling date is 1st April 2023. Now the accounting year ended 31st March 2024 වුණා. Once every 6 months නේ service කරන්නේ. එතකොට first 6 months ඉවර වෙනවා. machine එක fix කරපු දවසේ තමයි මාස 6කින්. ඒ කියන්නේ 30th June වෙනකොට. නේ? ඊළඟ service එක ඉවර වෙන්න ඕනේ 31st December වෙනකොට. එතන 2 services should have gone. Isn't it? මේක කියනවනේ දෙන්න. නේ? Company has provided 2 services. Service හතරෙන් කීයක් provide කළේ ඉවරද? දෙකක් provide කළේ ඉවර. මේ අහන්න. අපිට එතකොට කොච්චරක් අපි customer ගෙන් ගත්තද? 400,000 plus 200,000. In total we have collected 600,000. එතකොට ඔයාගේ double entry වෙන්නේ මොකද්ද? Cash account debit 600,000 නේද? ඒකෙන් ඔයාගේ sales income එක කීයද? 400,000 නේ? ඔයාගේ service income එක කීයද? Only 100,000. 50,000 කියන්නේ දෙකක් වගේ income එක. ඊටු 100,000 මොකක්ද? Service income received in advanced. ඔයා මේකේ double entry එක ලියුවොත් හොඳයි මෙහෙම cash account debit 600,000. Sales income credit 400,000. Service income credit 100,000. Unearned service income credit 100,000. Clear? Write the double entry. Cash account debit 600,000. 600,000. Cash account debit 600,000. Sales income credit how much? Sales income credit 400,000. Make it up. Cash account debit 600,000. Sales income credit 400,000. Service income credit 100,000. Unearned service income credit 100,000. Now service income received in advance කිව්වත් හරියි. මේ unearned කියන වචනේ දාන්න මේ standard එකේ වචන use කරන්නේ. Unearned income. You have received the income but not earned. Is that clear? මම හිතන්නේ ඉතින් ආවොත් එන වගේ එකක්. ඔය වගේ එකක් කම්පැනි ගානක කොහොමද ඇප්ලයි වෙන්න පුළුවන්? ආට කම්පැනි ගානක මෙහෙම කියයි. අහන්න. ගාන කම්පැනි ගානක කියන්න පුළුවන් මෙන්න මේ type එකක්. ඔය adjustment එක කොහොමද දෙන්න පුළුවන්? දීලා ඔයාට කියේද total amount received from the customer has been credited to sales. නේ. එතකොට අර කරන්න එක sales වලින් අයින් කරලා service income එක වෙනම service income එකක් කියලා recognize කරන්න. Income received in advance you have to show as liability. Okay මේක adjustment එකකට එනකොට පොඩි කැලලක් මේකේ තියෙන්නේ. මේකේ තියෙන story එක තමයි වැදගත්. Right. Now see the next question 2 also. Just read the second question. Bontex PLC is a seller of high-tech machines on customer request. Due to the high complexity of the technology, machine should be installed by the technical experts of the company itself. But after sale services can be obtained by the company or similar suppliers in the market. Company usually sells a machine at rupees 2 million and rupees 400,000 is charged for installation. After sale service is provided at rupees 200,000 each. On 1st January 2024, the company has entered into a contract with the customer to sell, install and provide 3 services once every 2 months from the date of sold the machine. It was agreed to charge rupees 2.8 million for all above agreements and 100,000 trade discount was given on the above price. Machine was sold and full amount was received on 1st January 2024. First service has been provided on 1st March 2023. Required. Explain the above contract under SlFRS 15 and recognize the revenue for the year ended 31st March 2024. The high complex situation, right? It what are the worst case. Just read, understand, and do this. It's not a fast paper. I just prepared this question for you. It's a sort of own creation. So, just read. හරි බලන්න මම question එක බලන්න board එකේ summarize කළා. අගින් මම කියන්නේ Bontex PLC is a seller of high-tech machines on customer request. Due to the high complexity of the technology, machine should be installed by technical expert of the company itself. Again, can you purchase the say if you are a customer, can you get the machine and get it fixed by someone else? No. You must get the company expert. Purchasing is none other than purchasing and fixing. At the company point of view, you can't sell the machine without fixing. මොකද කිසිම කෙනෙක් අරගෙන වෙන කෙනෙකුට හයි කරන්න බෑ මේක. ඒතර කස්ටමර් කෙනෙක් මේක අරගෙන නිකන් තියා ගන්න නෑ. ඒ කියන්නේ buy කරනවා කියන්නේ මොකද්ද? Fixing. මොකද්ද? Sale of the machine must include fixing. ඒ කියන්නේ මොකද්ද? Even though you are given the sale of the machine and fixing separately, those are not distinct. තේරුණාද? ඒතර මේකේ මොනවාද performance obligations කියවා යන්න. ආයි පාරක් මේකේ කියනවානේ providing services කියලා. Hurry, so when you read this, you will get an idea like this. Look at me. Sale of the machine. Look at me, please. For sales, you will charge 2 million. For fixing, you will charge 400,000. And 3 services. It is 3 services. Once every 2 months. Services to not services to 200,000 can charge in 600,000 value බලනකොට ඔයාලට පේනවා performance obligation තුනක් කියලා. value බලනකොට. ඇයි? sale of the machine, fixing the machine, services. ඒක මම දීලා තියෙන ඒ විදිහට නිකන් බැලුවාම ඔයාලට ඒ වගේ idea එකක් එන්න. Do you understand what I'm saying? When you are looking at this, you will get here there are 3 obligations, but actually don't take as 3 performance obligations, only 2. Why? These 2 are non-distinct. Non-distinct performance obligations you have to take together. This is performance obligation 1, this is performance obligation 2. Don't write as 3 performance obligations. Here in this scenario, there are only 2 performance obligations. What are those? Selling and fixing the machine and providing services. अब मैं 5-step model एक बताऊँ. What are the step 1? Sale of the machine, sale and fixing the machine and providing services. Step 1, selling and fixing the machine and providing services of a high technical machine. That is the contract. Recognize it. Number 2, identify the performance obligation. There are 2 performance obligations, not 3, only 2. That is the important part. 2 performance obligation. What is that? The first one, selling and fixing. First one is selling and fixing. Number 2, providing services. Performance obligation देखा जाता है. Performance obligations तुनाक क्या लगाते हैं? ऐसे के तुनाक नोवे. selling and fixing are not distinct. Those are not distinct. Okay? Distinct name. I distinct can if you can take this separately only distinct. Okay, makan tu those are combined. Combine and take. Okay. Then what is step 3? Determine the transaction price. Mike kunci kata anda tu. When you determine the transaction price, memory ඔයා මේක හිතන්න එපා. selling price එක මෙච්චරයි, installation cost එක මෙච්චරයි, service cost එක මෙච්චරයි. මේ තුනේ total එක 3 million. This is not the transaction price. This is not the transaction price. It clearly states we sell this machine at 2.8 million. At the time of sales, discount is given 100,000. This minus this 2.7. This is the transaction price. Transaction price is 2.7 after trade discount there. ඉබාගේදී આવුත් අහන දැන් මම දන්නවා trade discount එක තමයි දාන්නේ මට ලෝම අයලාගේ අහන්න පුළුවන් ටික මම ඔය කරලා ඔබට දෙන්න. ඒක හරියට දෙන්න step 3. Now tell me what is the point to give you these? Yeah, you are given these to calculate the relative standalone selling price. These are the relative standalone selling prices. Remember that? Relative standalone selling price of selling. Selling the machine is 2 million. Relative standalone selling price of installation. Relative standalone selling price of service. Okay. Now how to do the allocation part? Let's see how to do the allocation. And you have to do the allocation only among 2 performance obligations, not 3. Performance obligation 1, selling and fixing. Total consideration is 2.7 million. This into the total of these two. 2.4 million divided by 3 million. This is the amount we have to allocate for the sale and fixing. That is how much? 160. This is the income of selling and fixing. For the next part, this into 600,000 divided by 3 million. That is 540. This is the allocation. It's a good question, good allocation. Okay. I want decimals for that target. A transaction price is 2.8 million. Trade discount is not. Hurry. ඊට පස්සේ දැන් බලන්න ඕනේ මොකද්ද? Revenue recognition according to the question. Question එකේ කොහොමද revenue recognize කරන්නේ? ඔයා බලන්න ඕනේ whether the performance obligation is satisfied. How many performance obligations are satisfied here? Is the machine sold? Was it sold? Yes, it was sold. And how many services we have provided? Only one service. චුට්ටක් අහගන්න. දැන් මේකේ 540 කියලා කියන්නේ services තුනකට නේද? එහෙනම් ඔයා බලන්න එක service එකකට කීයද කියලා. ඒක services තුනකින් බෙදන්න. 180,000 each. නේ? We charge අපිට allocate කරන්න පුළුවන් 180,000 for each service එක. සාමාන්‍ය service එකක cost එක 200,000 වුණාට relative standalone selling price එක දාලා ගන්නකොට service එකෙන් අපිට ගන්න පුළුවන් income එක වෙන්නේ 180,000 only. තේරුණා? එතකොට මෙතන කරන්න වෙන්නේ මොකක්ද? When you recognize the revenue, ඔයාලට කියන්න මොකක්ද ආ recommendation එක? Recognize the revenue with respect to sale and fixing. නේ? Recognize the revenue with respect to sale and fixing and recognize the service revenue with respect to only one service. එතකොට අපි double එක වෙනවා. Cash account debit 2.7 million. මේක කියනවානේ the full amount full consideration has been collected කියලා. ඊට පස්සේ credit date is කොහොමද යන්නේ? Sales income, or you can say sales and fixing for the installation 2160. From the service income Take 180,000 unearned service income 360,000. Okay. Date එක question එකේ date එක සුට්ටක් හැදෙන්න ඕනේ නේද last මෙතන මේ අන්තිමට මේක යටම කොටසනේ මේ last time sold and full amount was received on 1st January 2024. First service was has been provided on 1st March 2024, not 23. You know sell කරලා නැහැ. 1st March 2024 විදිහට දෙන්නේ. හරිද පුංචි දෙයක් මේකෙ මෙන්න මේ last recognition of revenue කියන එකේ පුංචි තව දෙයක් කියන්න තියෙනවා මේ දැන් අපිට කියන්න අපින් අහනවානේ when the performance obligation is satisfied recognize the revenue කියලා. අපි කොහොමද performance obligation එක satisfy කරන්නේ කියන්නේ? How we can say the performance obligation is satisfied? ඒකටත් පොඩි conditions ටිකක් මේකේ කියනවා අපි නිකන් just idea එකක් ගමු. එක්කෝ හරි we should have given the physical custody of the asset to the buyer. Asset is physically delivered to the buyer, you can say ownership is transferred. Natha, if the legal title is given, you can say ownership is transferred. If the risk and return or the risk and rewards of the asset are borne by the buyer, we can say we have given the asset. Understand? And if you can confirm these are not returned back. So with that you can confirm the ownership is the performance obligation is satisfied. Okay na punchi sentence එක මම මෙතන දාලා දෙනවා බලන්න එක තේරුණාද කියලා 5 step 5 එකේ an entity shall recognize revenue when the entity satisfies a performance obligation by transferring a promised goods or service to customer and asset is transferred when the customer obtains the control of the asset. And asset එකේ control එක customer නම් ගන්න. දැන් ඒක අපිට අයිති නැත්තම් يعني asset is controlled by the customer, then we can say performance obligation is satisfied. ඕකට තව තියෙන conditions ඕක කියවලා බලනකොට දැන් වල තිබිච්ච මම කිය මගේ මතකයේ හැටියට ඒකට අපිට ගන්න පුළුවන් එක්කෝ physical ownership يعني physically asset is given to the customer. නැත්නම් legal title is given. නේ? It's confirmed that the asset is not returned back by the customers. හරි. ඒවත් නැත්නම් control එක asset එකේ control එක customer එකට ගිහිල්ලා තියෙනවා නේ. And any risk and rewards of the asset are borne by the customer. On these conditions you can say the asset is the performance obligation is satisfied, right? So that's all about SlFRS 15. I think it's more than enough. This knowledge is more than enough to the exam. They won't test this much.